Did you know that most teens who drink alcohol get it from people they know? Usually their friends or family members. But regardless of where they get it, alcohol puts teens at risk for injury, to themselves and to others. You can help make it a safe summer for the teens you know. Don't serve them alcohol. It's unsafe, it's illegal, and it's irresponsible. Find out more at don'tserveteens.gov. That's don'tserveteens.gov. A message from the Federal Trade Commission and this station.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading materials supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit stockcarsteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
Powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Can't take no more than hair. Sets the flag game down. I'll be here to the last lap around. Worked all week, it's time to play. Gonna get a little bit sideways. Hey, sets the flag game down. Be here to the last lap around. Worked all week, it's time to play. Gonna get a little bit sideways.
Fasten your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for the fastest hour in motorsports. We're back here on Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online for a brand new edition of Motorsports Madness. And here's what's on tap tonight. We'll talk the latest NASCAR news and notes from around the garage area. We'll take a look back at this weekend's Chili Bowl Nationals, including Brian Clausen's impressive win. We'll take a look at the upcoming Rolex 24 at Daytona and take a look at Chad Reed's dominating AMA Supercross triumph. He scored the victory Saturday night in Anaheim. All that tonight here on The Madness, and we're glad you're along for the ride. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jacob Seelman, the voice of Speed77 Radio, alongside my colleague Tom Baker. We're down a man at the moment. We seem to have lost our esteemed third member, Tom. The Pikester's not with us at the moment. We're trying to track him down, though.
I can't figure out how you lose a Pikester. I don't know. That's a big fish.
I know, right? Maybe we need to get a fishing rod or something, reel him back in here to the table.
I'm not exactly sure what the bait is for Pikester, but we'll have to figure it out here. He seems to be missing absent without leave kind of thing. So we'll have to assess some penalty points and a fine.
Black flag. Well, the two of us here can at least get started tonight. Certainly a lot of news still to talk about. And
we got this.
None more so in the news over the past about 48 hours than a report from the Charlotte Observer on possible changes to the NASCAR point system for 2014, specifically the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup. Tom, you and I have both looked at this, debated this. There's parts of it that I like, but there's other parts that I'm like, whoa, hold up. Are you crazy? Are you kidding me? This is going to spark a debate that's going to take us all the way to Daytona, and it's going to take us probably all the way to Richmond when we figure out what the heck's going on here.
Well, let me ask you a question, Jacob. What are the parts that you like? Let's start there.
let's start with what I like. And what I like is what the report says that NASCAR wants to do about making winning a requirement to get in the chase. I like it. I don't think enough emphasis has been placed on the individual races, and I think if you win a race and you perform as opposed to not winning a race and being consistent enough to slip into the chase, I think winners deserve to be in the chase. Granted, I also think there needs to be a stipulation that you have to be a full-time car, but I like that qualification as far as getting into the chase. I don't know that I'm not quite sold on the fact that NASCAR wants to expand the field to 16 cars, because I don't think we're going to have quite that many winners in the first 26 races, but I like the winning requirement. I think it's going to force these guys to get up on the wheel a little bit more, because they know if they want to contend for a championship, they have to get to victory lane at least once over the course of the regular season.
So does NASCAR expect they're going to have 16 winners?
Apparently that's what it looks like, but I don't think it's necessarily going to happen, which brings us to, what do you do if you don't have 16 winners? Well, then you take the highest drivers in points who haven't won a race. I can see that. I mean, it's not very much different than what we do now, except you're opening it up to more winners. So there really catches the guys who may not get lucky enough to win a race, but have still been consistent enough on points to be able to contend for a championship. So I like that setup. Now, what I can't stand is what they want to do for the last 10 races. And this is really, really grinding me tonight. Grinding my gears, if you will. NASCAR wants to put these 16 drivers in the chase for the championship, and then go all American Idol on this. Eliminate 4 after 3 races, eliminate 4 after the next 3 races, eliminate 4 after the 9th race. Then reset the points for the 4 remaining drivers and make it winner take all at Homestead. Are you kidding me?
You mad, bro?
Just a little bit. No, you are devaluing a championship if you make it winner take all at Homestead. I'm sorry, I don't care if they are the 4 best drivers of the season. You cannot make a season-long points championship based on one race. It doesn't work like that. Why not just offer a championship for each individual race then, if you're going to do it like that? No, I don't like it. If NASCAR goes that route, I think they're making a huge mistake. Joel and I were talking about it a couple weeks ago on the Formula One side. There comes a point where Game 7 turns into manipulation, and it turns into taking a championship or a season out of the hands of the drivers and putting it up to chance. And I don't agree with it. I don't like it. And I think there's going to be a lot of people, if this is the route that NASCAR announces later this week, I can see a lot of people that are going to get really fired up over it besides just me.
Well, okay, so let's take a look at it from this perspective. What is it that you think that excites most people about watching a race?
If you're being honest, some people would say the crashes, other people would say side-by-side racing, and then there is NASCAR sitting up there in their little glass box that seems to think that Game 7 moments are the only thing that matters for 36 races.
See, I think it's side-by-side racing and passing. I mean, anybody who watches a race purely for the accidents, I don't want them listening to this show. I don't want them on racechaser.online.com. I don't want them anywhere near anything that I'm involved with, because they're not race fans. So I'm going to discount that small portion of the population that just loves to watch things crash into walls where people could get hurt and die, because I've seen too many people get hurt and die. So we'll just talk about the fans who we feel like are the rational ones. They want side-by-side racing and they want passing. NASCAR seems to think that the chase is not giving the people what they want. And they're right. It's not giving the fans what they want, because it's unnecessary. The chase, in and of itself, at this point, is useless. It does nothing but inject more layers of things into a race than what needed to be at. All you need to do is what they do in the Nationwide Series and in the Truck Series, and just run the points out to the end of the season. I understand why they created the chase. I understand they gave it a try. It's not necessary anymore. Now they're talking about changing it to the point where we barely recognize it. So if you feel like you have to make that much of a change to something, what you're really saying is, it sucks. Well, if it sucks, throw it out and let's just be done with it. That way we don't have to have these debates every year about whether or not to add cars, whether or not Michael Waltrip's going to play a game, whether or not we're going to have, one race, winner take all. Personally, if Dale Earnhardt were still alive and competing, I would have loved to have seen that type of a format. But with that being said, I just don't understand what they think they're doing with eliminating 4 and then eliminating 4. I mean, I think, why don't we just get Ryan Seacrest to come in and we'll have a fan vote, and then we'll just eliminate the bottom 4. I mean, if we're going to do that, why don't we get the fans involved and at least, do it that way? We'll throw out the bottom 4 and then we'll see what's left. I think I agree with you. I think it's just a mess. There's nothing about it I like. I love the fact that they're trying to emphasize winning. Why don't we just go back to talking about who wins races instead of having it somehow apply to some sort of a playoff that the sport was never made for? And if you really want to emphasize winning, then let's put passing points in, and then everybody gets to play for the championship.
Now we're getting somewhere, and unfortunately we'll just have to wait and see officially what NASCAR announces, because this week is the media tour, I might add. But while we're talking about NASCAR news and notes, let's talk about rookies, shall we? Because you and I have been discussing for about 3 weeks that this year's rookie class has been shaping up to be not only the most stacked, but the most competitive rookie class in about 15 years in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. Add 2 more names to that pocket. Earlier today, BK Racing announced that Alex Bowman and Ryan Truex would both be signed to full season rides for their 2 cars. The 93 going to be renumbered to the 23 as a nod to one of their primary sponsors, Dr. Pepper. And now all of a sudden, you have 8 rookies, all talented rookies, going to be duking it out at the sport's top level. You've got Truex and Bowman. You've got Austin Dillon, Kyle Larson, Michael Annett, Justin Allgaier, Cole Witt, Parker Kligerman. I don't know about you, but I love what this year is shaping up to look like. The Rookie of the Year award is going to mean something again, and all these young guys are going to be going at it, and I think a lot of your excitement is going to come from right there.
Well, now that's all a much happier note, Jacob. I'm happy to see you've taken the show in a much more positive direction here. I have to admit that you caught me off guard here. I was so busy doing other work today, I missed the BK Racing news. Alex Bowman and Ryan Truex. So they, much like Swan Racing, pretty much committed to developing drivers who could be with them for the long term, sacrificing perhaps immediate performance in favor of future performance, which is quite interesting. I agree with you. That really makes the Rookie of the Year race quite spicy. I think that you've got some young guys there. I mean, they're both personable guys. I think BK Racing did well for themselves. That's going to be a great rookie race. I don't know when the last time I remember, if there ever has been a time where we've had 8 drivers all running for Rookie of the Year in Sprint Cup, but I'm sure it's been quite a while.
Oh, it's been quite a while. I don't know that we've had 8 in at least this millennium of the sport, but certainly We've had 5 or 6 back in the early 2000s. I think of the years back to when Jimmy Johnson in 2002 was running for the Rookie of the Year, and you had 4 or 5 guys who were competitive on a regular basis for the award. But now you've got 8 guys, all with talent, who have shown it at the sport's lower levels, getting their opportunities at the sport's top level. Do I think a couple of them have slightly more of an advantage than others? Yeah, Austin Dillon and Kyle Larson come to mind because their equipment, you could say, is on a tier just above everybody else. But I don't think any of those other 6, your Allgaiers, Truex, Bowman, etc., I don't think any of those guys don't have the drive to take what they've got and go out and contend for top 15s, top 20s on a regular basis and maybe not surprise some people. We saw Ryan Truex make his Cup debut for Phoenix Racing last year and had a really solid run going before a mechanical failure derailed that. So I'm not naive enough to think that it's going to be Dillon and Larson all the way for this Rookie of the Year battle, and I'm certainly of the opinion that this is the first time we've had this many rookies all with a legitimate shot at going for Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, and I must admit, I think I'm a little surprised at the Alex Bowman signing, but we seem to have a trend away from necessarily having to have a lot of Cup experience in favor of just being young and marketable and having proven yourself, at least to some degree, at the lower levels. I find that to be interesting, and I also find it to be a nice change from what appeared to be a trend that was going back toward sort of a recycling of some of the drivers that have been around a long time and really not necessarily terribly productive. So I'm kind of excited to see a couple of these teams taking a shot with some of these young kids, and we'll see where it goes. That's going to be a lot of fun to see those guys. And remember something, Jacob, the Rookie of the Year battle is a little bit different necessarily than the Chase or the championship battle in the sense that, really it's as much about consistency. Not many of these guys are likely to win a race. Surely Austin Dillon could. Surely Kyle Larson could. There are a few of these guys. I mean, anybody can win on any given day, but you would more likely kind of owe this one to the guys who are the most consistent and who stay out of trouble from week to week. So I think this is going to be a really interesting race to watch. And of course, it starts in a track where, as I just said, anybody can win. So, it's going to be fun to go to Daytona with 8 rookies and see how that works out.
Yeah, it will be, and with that, we'll take our first caution flag of the night. But when we come back, we'll have a little bit of a twist onto our originally announced schedule of how we're going to roll here on the Madness tonight. Kyle Souza's in the house, and we're going to shift gears just a little bit and talk some Northeast and modified news before we slip in the rest of our regularly scheduled content here on the Madness. We'll be right back. You're listening to Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online, and we are your home for motorsports.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading material supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit stockcarsteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
Powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports. Welcome back to Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online, and tonight's Monday night edition of the Madness. And I'll tell you what, Tom, this actually feels like a homecoming for me in a way, just because I started the Madness back in 2013 on Monday nights. We moved it to Tuesday nights because of some scheduling stuff about the middle of last year, but lo and behold, we're back on Monday nights. I love it. It lets us catch up with the entire weekend in racing right away. I'm excited, and I'm even more excited to welcome back one of our esteemed colleagues to the round table after several weeks' absence on Thursday nights. He's back with us on the Madness here on a Monday night. Kyle Souza out of the Northeast, going to talk some modified news and other Northeast racing. Kyle, first off, welcome back. We're glad to have you back at the round table and excited to catch up on some Northeast news again.
Jacob, Tom, it's good to be back here tonight. We've had some PC problems, but I think as we try and make sure this is okay, I think the mic's good. I think we're back in action. And, Tom, a while ago we spoke about Money Matt. He won all those races up here in the Northeast, and he won most recently at the Turkey Derby. And you know what, Tom? Some breaking news coming out of the New England area in the last 2 weeks is that Matt Hirschman is going to drive part-time for Wayne Darling in the B-52 Beamer, the car that was originally driven in the past couple of seasons by Doug Colby. Tom, what's your opinion on this? Hirschman returning to the tour part-time with Wayne Darling, and the rumor has it he's going to drive his own family car the rest of the race, is going to go for the title in 2014.
Well, I mean, Jacob and I talked about this Thursday night. Any car that Matt Hirschman gets in goes to the front. I think he could probably put a wheelbarrow in the front of a wheel and tour race. But so I think it's an interesting partnership. The only thing you worry about a little bit is the chemistry, and will the team come together? Can they work together well? All of those sorts of but any of those issues aside, I don't see why this shouldn't be a winning combination right from the start. It certainly is going to give a little spice to the upcoming season on the tour, because anytime you got Matt Hirschman going for a title, that's something you got to pay attention to.
I completely agree, Tom. And the sad part is, rumor had come down that Hirschman was not going to be competing at the Battle of the Beach, and rumor still has it that Wayne Darling and the B-52 team will not be taking that trip to Florida. So that could hurt his efforts for 2014. But I would expect Hirschman to be at the front when he gets in that car. He's in the front with any car he gets in, but especially the equipment that he's going to be in. Wayne Darling has won various races and various championships with that modified. He's won various championships not only in modified but in pro stock racing. Most recently this past season with his son David Darling taking the pro stock championship at the Seacock Speedway. Wayne is one of the best in the business with equipment, and that B-52 Beamer is going to be fast when it comes out of the track in 2014.
Kuzi, you told us last week that it looked as though the New England journey to Florida, the posse was going to be a little thin in the traveling circus from New England to the shows at Smyrna and Daytona. Is that still what you're hearing, that there's not going to be as much New England area participation in those shows as there was in 2013?
I would definitely expect that for at least the Battle at the Beach at the Daytona National Speedway. The trip there and the cost, not only the trip, but the cost once you get there is going to be too much for a lot of these teams. Rumor has it there's going to be about 12 to 13 cars that are going to take the trip. Rumor has that 8 are going to come from up here in the Northeast, and the other half will come from the Southern Tour, such as George Brunholzl, Andy Seiss, I know, is going to try and make that trip to Daytona for the Battle at the Beach. I think where you're going to see most of the New England crowd would be in the SK Modified portion, possibly at the New Smyrna Raceway. They've been picking up some side races for the week of Speed Weeks 2014. I know a couple of the SK drivers up here have talked about that they might want to take that trip down there to Daytona for the week. So the SK portion, I might be able to see that at the New Smyrna Speedway, but I think the Battle at the Beach at Daytona is going to be more of the 12-13 car range, which is upsetting because the race could be cut from 150 laps down based on the car count from what I'm hearing.
And see, that's disappointing in my mind as well, just because the Modifieds put on an incredible race for the 150-lap show that they did at last year's Battle at the Beach. Obviously, we saw Steve Park take the victory in one of the Smeriglio-owned machines. Kyle, I hate that it really seems like the Northeast is starting to fracture a little bit with the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour, although I do have to admit, car counts for the Southern cars seem to be faring at least a little bit better. A couple of announcements from this past week that a couple of young drivers going to get shots for the Southern Modified Tour, so we could see a little bit better car count than we're expecting, but I agree with you, it's definitely going to be down from what it was in 2013.
Not only that, I mean, the Northern Tour had one of the best up-and-coming drivers in the business in Justin Bonsignor, and to turn to the Valenti Modified Racing Series for just a quick second, rumor has come down and been announced this week by Justin and YankeeRacer.com along with RacedayConnecticut.com that Bonsignor is not going to be competing full-time on the 2014 Tour for the Wheel and Modified Tour. Instead, he's going to be competing full-time with the Valenti Modified Racing Series. 2 years ago, John McKennedy drove for Art Barry in car number 2. They won the championship, won various races. That Spafco piece of equipment is top-notch in the Valenti Modified Racing Series. In the 2014, Justin Bonsignor and Art Barry are going to hook up, combine, and go after the championship in the Valenti Modified Racing Series. And I know, Tom, that's going to be a team that's going to be competitive before it's all said and done.
Wow, that's definitely a big announcement. Art Berry's 21 car has been a top car on the series and in modified racing in general for, 20 years or more. And that's really an interesting turn of events that Justin would be going to Valenti over the Wheel and Modified Tour. I'm a little surprised to hear that, but that's certainly going to be a boost for the VMRS for sure.
Well, I think part of it is the cost value comparing to the Wheel and Modified Tour. Bonsignor often comes from the Long Island area to a lot of the races, and the cost is just becoming too much for a lot of these teams. It seems as if the New England races for the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour are going to be where we're going to get the best car count, but the point standing chase is only going to come down to those cars that are willing to take the trip to maybe the New Hampshire Motor Speedway, and the big race that's going to decide that championship chase, the Bristol Motor Speedway in Tennessee in August. That's where a lot of these teams are not going to take that trip, and it's going to depend on the teams that do to fight it out for the championship. And I would expect you're going to see the same contenders. Ryan Preece is going to be a contender for the championship, Doug Colby in car number 2, and as long as Matt Hirschman is able to run all the races with both of those cars, expect Money Matt to be a championship contender in 2014.
I find all of this interesting, Kyle, and I want to go back to Matt Hirschman for just a second because I had not heard about the deal that Matt was going to fill out the schedule after running part-time with the number 52 and Wayne Darling. We saw Matt Hirschman struggle on the tour a couple years ago when he was running the number 3 machine for the Bowler Camp. Matt Hirschman's always been an enigma to me when it comes to the Wheel and Modified Tour because I've never been one to see him have a lot of success on the tour despite all his success in the other tour-type modified events around the Northeast. I'm not sold on the fact that he's going to be a legitimate championship contender until he can prove he can get back to victory lane.
Yeah, and Jacob, I think from one point, that's a good point. Hirschman last season did not win a race that cost him any less than $3,000 in the final payout. So Hirschman is one of those big money guys. He's going to come up when the big money races happen. And especially up here in the Northeast, we've added 3 in 2014. I hope this Thursday night we can get into it just a little bit. The TriStar Open Series up here in the Northeast is going to be the Seacock Speedway, the Lee USA Speedway, and the Star Speedway. And total purses, just to start the race, you're going to get $1,000. Those are the races that I would expect that B-52 Beamer to definitely be in contention. But I do think on the tour, once they come together with that piece of equipment and Hirschman gives it his best, they can be competitive. And I think they can have an effort in 2014 for the championship, especially because he's going to fill the schedule, even if not with that 52, with his own family-owned car that we haven't seen him in a while on the Wheel and Tour.
It's going to be interesting, Kyle. Certainly going to be a lot more to talk about on Thursday. Anything else you've got for us from around the Northeast?
Well, I would slide one more thing in from a modified to a pro stock perspective up here in the Northeast. Valenti Modified Racing Series driver Todd Anarumo has decided that he's going to slope from the Valenti Modified Racing Series in 2014. He's going to run part-time on that tour, so that's one less competitor for the Valenti Modified Racing Series to have. He's actually going to be joining the Seekonk Speedway full-time in the Pro Stock division. A little bit less. Todd's been known to be in the front in a lot of those Valenti races. Hasn't been able to close the deal a lot, but that's going to be a miss for the Valenti Modified Racing Series because I know that car can be competitive wherever it goes. Valenti's still looking like it's going to have 30 cars a week. That's a big, big tour. And one more side note, Warren Alston, who is a indoor starter throughout the East Coast of the United States, has been named the chief starter of the Valenti Modified Racing Series, with Rich Keeter leaving them for 2014.
And it's certainly going to provide a lot of storylines all over the Northeast, especially in the Valenti Tour, with it looking like that maybe the VMRS is going to take over as the #1 tour in the Northeast. Kyle, always appreciate you coming down and hanging out with us here at the round table on the Madness, and also on Thursday nights. And I know we'll see you and Tom once again here at the table on Thursday night when we return the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Report. Going to take the airwaves Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. Tom, I know we've got an exciting show lined up once again on Thursday.
Yeah, it's going to actually be a good show. A couple of heavy hitters that you spoke with going to be a part of the show on Thursday from the ARCA series. Frank Kimmel actually going to the headline from the ARCA series, and also Joey Gase going to be talking with us as well. And so both of those drivers, featured drivers, and so some ARCA Nationwide Series presence on Thursday night show, as well as all of the latest updates from the modifieds and the late model series as well. And who knows who else will be joining us on Thursday night. So really going to be a wide open Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports show on Thursday night right here at 7 o'clock on Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Should be fun, and glad to have Kuza back, man. We missed you.
Well, good to be back, Tom. I hope Thursday night we can get in a little bit. As I spoke of fans, that TriStar series up here in New England is going to be something that's really, really going to come out with a lot of the tour drivers that are not going to run the full-time tour, going to take these big dollar races. We're going to get into that just a little bit. And Kimmel, that's always a good pickup. Glad to be back here on Tuesday, but Thursday night I know is going to be a little bit more fun with Tom. Going to be a good time.
And see, that goes to show right there how long we've missed Kyle. He said Tuesday, and we're back on Mondays. But right now we're going to take a caution flag, and when we come back, it's the second half of the Madness, and maybe a little bit of overtime as well. When we come back, it's the Chili Bowl and the end of an era in Tulsa. That's coming up next. You're listening to Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online, and we are your home for motorsports.
The odds of a young girl being discovered by an industry insider while singing to herself pumping gas? 1 in 300 million. The odds of the daughter of a clergyman from Severn, Maryland spending 11 weeks at #1 on the U.S. singles charts? 1 in 19 million. The odds of going on to win 6 Grammy Awards? 1 in 1.4 million. The odds of selling over 40 million records? 1 in 800,000. The odds of this musician and performer having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 110. I'm Toni Braxton, and I encourage you to learn the signs of autism at autismspeaks.org. Early diagnosis can make a lifetime of difference. Autism Speaks. It's time to listen. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading materials supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Not nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit stockcarsteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio.
Powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports. Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. I'm Jacob Seelman alongside Tom Baker. We're still missing the Pikester himself, missing AWOL, whatever you want to call it. We'll hope to find him here before the end of the hour, if not for next week. But Tom, now I want to talk about the most exciting race of the weekend, in my opinion, as it usually is towards the end of January, and that's the Chili Bowl. And when you talk about the Chili Bowl, one family name comes to mind, and that's the Swindells. Kevin and Sammy combined have 9 wins, including the last 5 until Saturday night.
Yeah, until Saturday night. You know, it's if I hear one more person say, "Oh, 2 more laps, 3 more laps," Kevin would have won 3. You know, he didn't win. Brian Clausen won. Come on, stop it! Congratulations to Brian Clausen on picking up a well-deserved Chili Bowl victory. Certainly, you know, Kevin Swindell was probably the fastest car in the race, but it did just run out of time. But you know what? You got to pass Brian Clausen if you get to him, and I don't think Brian was going to give it up that easy. He really ran well and just so much fun. I mean, that race is just so much fun. The format of the race is fun. You know, it's cumbersome and it's confusing and boy, it's just, but it is so much fun. I mean, and MAP TV did a great job with the broadcast. I really enjoyed that whole show from start to finish. I thought they did a great job, and a lot of excitement, a lot of passing. Really just some fantastic racing put on at Tulsa on Saturday night. And surprise, surprise, Brian Clausen, who doesn't get nearly the credit he deserves in my mind for being the driver that he is, you know, really has a nice feather in his cap now.
Yeah, he really does. He started the 2012 Indianapolis 500. He's driven an IndyCar a couple of times before, but he's been committed the last couple of years to the USAC ranks. He's a 3-time USAC national champion, multi-time USAC divisional champion from the sprint cars to the midgets. But Brian Clausen picking up his first ever Golden Driller, 10th attempt to win the race. He started his 10th A main and finally got to victory lane, but I debate those who say Kevin Swindell could have caught him if he'd had 2 or 3 more laps, because Kevin Swindell got together with Christopher Bell with about 6 laps to go, which put Clausen about 1.5 seconds out in front, and from there, Swindell could not close that gap. The checkered flag, that gap was still 1.5 seconds, so I debate those who say that Brian Clausen wasn't every bit as fast as Kevin Swindell was, because once Clausen was out in front, there was nobody that could touch him. And you know, on the Kevin Swindell Christopher Bell note, the scuffle in the infield after the race was a little bit interesting too.
We had a couple of hockey games break out at the Chili Bowl, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Kevin Swindell got into it just a little bit with Keith Coons, Chris Bell's car owner, after the race. They still finished 2nd and 3rd, respectively, did Swindell and Bell, but Keith Coons was not at all happy about the slider that Swindell put on his driver and really let him know how he felt about it post-race. Got up into Kevin's face just a little bit from what I understand, but obviously didn't go much further than that. And another scuffle, as you mentioned, a couple of different hockey games breaking out. We had an incident go on after one of the B mains that involved Brad Kuhn and Shane Cottle. Cottle ended up on his lid in turn 4 racing for the final transfer into one of the A mains. Brad Kuhn stuck it in there 3 wide, and Shane Cottle came out on the losing end of that one.
Yeah, and Connell was understandably upset, and I think there were a few people that were disappointed that Mav TV didn't have the cameras in the right places when Connell got back to the pits, but. It was an interesting night, and again, that's short track racing, man. That's sprint car racing. It's midget racing. It's late model racing, modified, whatever it is. I mean, when it's this big and there's that much on the line, stuff's going to happen. And so it was just a fun deal to watch. And how cool was it to have Dave Despain back on TV covering not just racing, but short track racing, open wheel, short track racing, just like he did in the Thursday Thunder days. I just think that's cool as heck.
And not to mention, but it was special for Dave Despain because he had never been to the Chili Bowl before this past week. And for his first Chili Bowl to be the one where Brian Clausen ends the reign of the Swindells, it was an incredible week. Kevin Swindell was the hard charger of the week. He passed somewhere along the lines of 49 cars from his qualifying night and the Saturday night. Jerry Coons Jr. made a little bit of history. He set a record breaking Dave Darland's record, started his 11th straight Chili Bowl AMA, and Kyle Larson was in the mix for a while until the engine expired, but it was just a great week of racing, and you're right, Mav TV did an incredible job. Dave Despain was brilliant all night long, and the telecast, I can't wait for next year now, because the Chili Bowl's always incredible every year, and this just proves why it's one of the great racing spectacles of the winter.
Well, what's fun about it is, you start with close to 300 cars, and, you have all the eliminations and all of the drama, and you have so many different varied backgrounds of drivers that enter this thing, and you got your Tim McCready's from the Northeast dirt world. You got Kevin Swindell, who obviously has been around open wheel his whole life, but has also done some NASCAR stuff. You got all these drivers that come from different places, different backgrounds, different levels of experience, and then you get a guy like Christopher Bell, who's he's still in diapers compared to a lot of these guys that he's racing against. And of course, he had a huge season this year in Power I and all of that. But, here he is young and he on the biggest stage, arguably, of his life. And he looked great. That's the beauty of the Chili Bowl, is it puts everybody on a bit of a level playing field, and you never know what can happen. And here comes Brian Clausen, who I guess would be considered a veteran racer by some of the, in comparison to some of the guys like Isabella he was racing against. And here he ends up winning the race and wasn't even really talked about as a pre-race favorite. That's what the Chili Bowl is. Alphabet soup can change everything, and it's just like you said, it's one of the most exciting events of the winter. And, it's races like this that make me wish we had a little more winter, because there's only really one indoor race of any major proportion left in the winter that, unless I'm leaving one out that I'm forgetting, and that is this weekend's upcoming race for the TQ Midgets in Atlantic City, and that'll be a lot of fun. But, then we get into racing season, you don't have these indoor races for a while.
That's exactly right. And again, incredible weekend of racing. Taking it indoors always makes it fun. Brian Clausen triumphant in the Chili Bowl. Kevin Swindell sees a 4-year win streak snapped. He comes home one spot short in second. And 18-year-old Chris Bell, last year's USAC National Midget Championship, rounding out the podium. Just, again, an unbelievable weekend capped off by a first-time winner. It doesn't get much better than that. Before we go to commercial, want to catch up a few additional news and notes items, including some AMA Supercross news. But first, out of the ARCA Racing Series, Tom, Team BCR Racing, Grant Enfinger's operation from 2013, has announced that Grant will have a teammate in the form of Justin Allison, grandson of International Motorsports Hall of Fame driver and NASCAR legend Donnie Allison, full season in the number 88 machine for the 2014 season, and Justin will take the green flag for his first race on the schedule at the legendary Daytona International Speedway, February 15th for the Lucas Oil 200. And how can we forget 1979 when his grandfather went at it with Cale Yarborough on the day that Richard Petty ultimately went to victory lane? Another legacy last name making his way back into the sport.
Yeah, that'll be kind of interesting to see Justin Allison, how he does in the ARCA series. He certainly has had some success in his racing career. It'll be interesting to see how he adapts. And he's a nice, he's a nice young man, and I think he's got a good teacher in Grant, and they're good people. So I would expect that they'll do well, and it's nice to see the Allison name back in one of the big series again for sure.
It really is. And now we move to the part where I really wish the Pikester was here to help me hash this out, because it would be a whole lot of fun, because he and I stayed up till about 1:30 in the morning to watch this race after the Chili Bowl on Saturday night.
That's where he is. He's still sleeping.
I know, right? But the AMA Supercross ran after the Chili Bowl Saturday night. If anybody wanted to stay up and watch that from Anaheim, the second race of 3 on the AMA schedule for 2014 from Anaheim, and it was a dandy of a race. Started out with Ryan Dungey leading the early laps. You saw Ryan Villapoto get up to about second before he went down. Dungey goes down out of the lead, uncharacteristic for 2 of the champions of the sport. James Stewart takes over, and you think, okay, a third former veteran and champion of this sport. Stewart's going to run away with it. Not Saturday night. Chad Reed in that number 22 bike had other plans, and he rode his way from 6th to pass James Stewart for the lead with about 6 laps to go. And once he was out front, he took the tail end of that bike and said, "See ya, boys," and left. And Chad Reed gapped the field by about 6 seconds at the checkered flag, wins the AMA Supercross from Anaheim, his 8th win at Angel Stadium, tying James Stewart and Jeremy McGrath for the most Supercross wins at Anaheim all time. His 42nd career win and his first win in over 2 years on the Supercross circuit. Chad Reed and the 22 Motorsports operation back on top in a dominating performance. And the young rookie, Ken Roxon, taking the points lead back away from Ryan Villapoto. The champ drops to second, just 1 point in arrears. But Tom, when you talk about Supercross racing, Chad Reed's a name that we always see up front, but when you talk Supercross, it's always Ryan Villapoto. How uncharacteristic is it that we see him go down once fighting for the lead, and then on the final turn of the final lap, fighting with arguably his biggest nemesis on the Supercross turf in Ryan Dungey, go down again coming to the checkered flag?
Yeah, that doesn't happen very often. You know, Villapoto's, in my opinion, Villapoto's one of the best there's ever been in that type of racing. I just, you know, sometimes we watch racing. Of course, you know, you and I are used to watching 4-wheel stuff, and you see a driver, for example, that like a Dale Jr. or somebody, a big name that just spins out or hits the wall twice in a race, or, you know, has just something happen, and you don't really have an explanation for it. But certainly an uncharacteristically bad night for Villapoto, and what a night for Chad Reed. Welcome back, Chad Reed. I mean, there again, not a lot of people probably spend a lot of time watching Supercross that are in our audience. I think a lot of our audience is 4-wheelers, but you guys really ought to be watching this stuff. It's as exciting as anything that you'll see in racing, and frankly, I just think all those guys are just completely nuts.
Oh, trust me, I'm right there with you, and I know somebody else who wanted to be in studio tonight to hash this out in our own DJ Everett is also as nuts as the rest of the Supercross crowd, and you're right, though, Tom. If you're not watching Supercross, you need to give it a shot. It's live on Fox Sports for the first time ever as a full season package, and these guys put on some of the greatest racing, whether it's 2 wheels or 4 wheels, anywhere in the country. If you have a chance, check out Fox Sports 1 on Saturday nights. They go through till about May. It's going to be exciting. Villapoto, only 1 point back, still going to be in contention for a 4th straight Supercross championship. Nobody's ever done that before, not even the great Jeremy McGrath, but you put Ralph Shaheen, Jeremy McGrath, and Ricky Carmichael in a TV booth and tell them to go nuts, and it's a show from the drop of the gate.
Well, you don't have to tell either Carmichael or Jeremy McGrath to go nuts. They are nuts, just by the nature of their typical personality. And Ralph Shaheen really is the perfect balance between from the other two. No, I think it's great, and I applaud Fox Sports 1, and I just don't get to say that very often anymore. But I applaud Fox Sports 1 for picking up that package, and I think it's great to see, the Formula One package this year is much better than it's been. Now we get a chance to see more of the Supercross stuff. We get a chance to see more of the sports car stuff. Racing as a whole, the variety of different types of racing that is available to watch, and that is available in good time slots to watch is much better this year than what it's been in the past. And I think some of the fans that really only favor 1 or 2 types of racing are missing out, because as someone who enjoys all different types of racing, I think it's fantastic that we get to see so many different divisions and disciplines of the sport, all in the same on the same station. So in the same time area as well on the weekends. Prime time is what I'm trying to say, unsuccessfully apparently, but not buried at 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the morning, except for the other night after the Chili Bowl.
Too true it is. And with that, we'll take our final caution flag of the night. And when we come back, Tom, you and I will preview this weekend's crown jewel and talk about time slots favoring divisions of racing. The beginning of the Rolex 24 is going to be in front of the biggest audience it's ever been. Network television. We'll talk about it, plus a look at who we think is going to end up with the Rolex watches in victory lane right after this. You're listening to Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. We are your home for motorsports.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading material supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit stockcarsteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed 77 Radio,
Powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports. Welcome back to Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online, and we're getting ready to roll this edition of the Madness to conclusion. Jacob Seelman and Tom Baker here at the round table, and Tom, now it's time for arguably the last great race of the winter before we talk Speed Weeks for 2014, and that is this weekend's crown jewel of sports car racing, the Rolex 24, the first race for the combined Tudor United Sports Car Championship, the merger of the American Le Mans Series and the Grand Am Road Racing Series. I'm personally psyched about this weekend's edition of the Rolex, the 52nd running of the Endurance Classic, and you have got some of the greatest drivers in the world taking laps around Daytona International Speedway, and there's probably 20 cars that could win this weekend's event. You've got 4 distinctly different classes, and you've got drivers running multiple classes. So many storylines, just like there are every year. Not to mention the defending winners were not that spectacular in the roar before the Rolex 24 pre-Daytona testing. Scott Pruitt, Memo Rojas, and that 01 camp from Chip Ganassi were not as brilliant at the top of the timesheets as we expected them to be, so this year's Rolex could well be wide open.
Well, I think it's going to be wide open, and I was trying to. I actually did take a few notes here on this because I knew we were going to talk about it, and I cannot find in my notes where I wrote how many cars they were expecting to start, but I thought it said something in the neighborhood of potentially 65 cars starting, combined cars starting this event. Just going to be a fantastic race, and I do think it's wide open, and I think it's neat to see the variety in cars this year. Some of the cars that you wouldn't necessarily expect to maybe be really in competition, like the Delta Wing, which I think actually may be more competitive than we think.
It may be more competitive than we think, and I'll admit I've been one of the guys to discount their drivers that they've had for the Delta Wing as well. I really questioned their decision to put Catherine Legg behind the wheel of that Delta Wing, but she was among the fastest drivers in roar before the Rolex testing. You've got Alexander Rossi behind the wheel of that Delta Wing. Of course, you've got the DPs versus the P2s. It's going to be a bunch of storylines, and that's only the prototype class.
Yeah, people sell Catherine Legg a little bit short, I think. I think this is more her comfort zone, and I think that I think she'll do fine. I mean, obviously you look at the Target Chip Ganassi teams, you look at of course Jamie McMurray and that whole group. Those are the guys that are the odds-on favorites to win the whole thing. But I think the competition within each division is what's going to make this really interesting this year. I mean, you've got drivers from the Sprint Cup Series, obviously the IndyCar Series, and international sports cars. I mean, I just think it's going to be a blast to watch this, and having everything combined is just going to give it a really fresh look and a fresh feel, and I think something that may even be a little bit more relatable to what the American race fans are used to as compared to what it was before.
I do tend to agree with you, and with all that competition, now I want to turn to 24 hours later and what we may see at the end of the afternoon. The biggest thing about this is the start and the finish going to be in a big eye. The start of the race at 2 p.m. on Saturday, actually going to be broadcast live on Fox. The beginning of the Rolex returning to network television for the first time in about 5 or 6 years. I know I'm pumped about it. I'm sure the drivers have to be excited that their biggest race of the season is going to be on a national stage once again. It's going to be exciting. Now we got to look at who could potentially be there at 2 p.m. on Sunday. My eye, though people are going to call me crazy for it, is on a team who's got a couple of youngsters and a couple of seasoned veterans, we'll say, and that's the Wayne Taylor Racing number 10 machine that's going to be piloted by their 2 full-time drivers in Ricky and Jordan Taylor, the Taylor brothers. being joined by their father, Wayne, the team owner, and Max the Axe Angelelli. Three alone between the two Taylor brothers and Max Angelelli is a talented lineup of drivers. You add Wayne Taylor into the mix, who was a former champion of the Rolex series with Max Angelelli, former Rolex at Daytona winner. I think that lineup is stout, and I think they've had the reliability to make it happen for 24 hours. We saw that reliability in their championship run in the Grand Am Rolex Sports Car Series for 2013. I think they continue it in 2014, and I'm picking the Wayne Taylor Racing number 10 to go to victory lane in the Rolex.
Well, certainly is a I guess you could label that a good dark horse. And maybe it's not such a dark horse. I mean, there's a lot of experience there, but until somebody, I favor the Chip Ganassi Racing with Felix Sabates group. I just think that team they're there every year, and until it's not often that someone beats them. I mean, Shank. The Peter Shank group beat him with Jamie McMurray, and certainly it's great to see Jamie back, and that's going to be an interesting team as well to watch that I think you're going to have to pay attention to. But I like Chip's chances, but this race is just one of those races that you just enjoy sitting back and watching. The technology and the various different types of cars. It's really just fun to kick back and watch it as a race fan, and not even necessarily to have somebody to cheer for, but just to admire all of the hard work and the differences between the groups. And this is a series that again, as we talked about earlier, Jacob, is getting more and more into the mainstream of the American motorsports intelligentsia, and the average race fans are starting to look at this and say, you know what, this stuff's pretty cool. So I think it's neat that it's getting the network exposure, both at the start and the finish of it. And, I hope that the fans will tune it in and watch it, because, again, there's other things out there besides NASCAR. And this is a good example of a type of racing that is just fun to watch. And I'm excited about it. And I think that it's going to be very interesting to see how it all turns out.
It really will be. And you mentioned Chip Ganassi Racing with Felix Sabates. 2 cars, 8 drivers. You've got the 01 with Scott Pruitt, Memo Rojas, McMurray, and young Sage Karam. And then you've got the 02 car with Scott Dixon, Tony Kanaan, Marino Franchitti. Just an unbelievable lineup.
Yeah. The 01 car is the car that I was am picking to win. That's the team I think that's going to be in victory lane. I think it's going to be fun again to have McMurray there, and it'd be fun to see Sage Karam make his debut in this type of racing too. That's going to be a little bit of a twist for Sage, used to the Indy Lights cars, the open wheel stuff, and now he gets to go play in the sports cars. That'll be cool.
Yeah, it will be, and I can't discount Kyle Larson also driving for Ganassi in that 02 car, of course.
That's right.
Dario Franchitti not able to run in the Rolex as he has in past years. His brother Marino taking his spot in the Ganassi Racing machine. Dario going to be, though, atop the pit box from what I've heard all weekend for the Rolex 24. He's taken on a lot of work inside the Ganassi organization. I know Chip's been loyal to him, and they're working on finding Dario a permanent place within that organization. But it's going to be so weird to not see him in the race car this weekend after everything he's done.
Yeah, here again, you always want to see those guys be able to retire on their own terms, and I think it's always unfortunate when a driver has to step out before his mind is ready to quit. We've seen that with a couple of legends in the sport over the last year or two, with Dario, of course, as a result of his accident, and short track legend Bentley Warren having to step aside as a result of a heart issue that's not necessarily an imminent health issue for him, but just one of those situations where when he's in the car and at speed, just has some difficulties breathing. So he had to step away, and of course, he's 70 years old or too, so past 70, and probably had enough, but he wasn't ready to quit. So it's always a shame when you have to step out when you're not mentally ready to do that. But we wish both of those guys all the best in their other endeavors, and we know Bentley's having a good time on his bike and all that. We know that Dario Franchitti's going to enjoy his involvement with Ganassi Racing's teams in whatever way he chooses to be, and I certainly hope we can get him up in a broadcast booth or two to do some IndyCar racing as well, because I think Dario's a lot of fun to listen to and has a lot of wisdom and a lot of insight to offer, and would certainly be a great addition to any broadcast team if he chooses to go in that direction.
Exactly, and normally this would be the point in the show where I would say we're done, but just as quickly as I would say we're done, there has been one more piece of news that's come across the radar that literally was just announced a few minutes ago that I want to make sure exactly, that I want to make sure we get in before the end of the broadcast tonight. This just in out of the NASCAR garage area. I know you did, but anyway. Turner Scott Motorsports has just announced their 2014 K&N Pro Series East driver lineup. 5 cars going to take the green flag in 2014 on the K&N East side for Turner Scott. 2 of their drivers who ran part-time with the organization last year, Brandon Jones and Ben Rhodes, going to run full-time with the organization, joined by 3 additional full-time cars. Cameron Haley going to make the move over from the K&N Pro Series West, just as his West Coast comrade Dylan Kwasniewski did in 2013, and obviously we saw how that turned out. Scott Heckert, a 20-year-old current college student, going to take over the wheel of one of those Turner Scott Motorsports machines. And here's the one that really surprises me. Kaz Gralla going to jump into the K&N Pro Series East full-time for Turner Scott Motorsports. Going to bring Oslink and some of the other partners along for the ride with him. But we saw Kaz impress. He took the checkered flag in the Banjo Matthews Memorial in 2013 at Hickory Motor Speedway, and he ran the Battle at the Beach in 2013 as well. So he's already had a taste of the K&N Pro Series East. But I think the biggest move for this is Cameron Haley stepping into the seat, one of those seats that Dylan Kwasniewski raced in 2013. I think that's your guy to watch out of the Turner Scott Motorsports stable, because I just have a feeling that Haley has the talent and the drive, just like Kwasniewski did, to jump over from the West and get it done in the East.
Well, I don't think there's any question that Cameron Haley is going to get it done. Certainly, I think he's going to be every bit what Dylan Kwasniewski has been. But I think the driver that I'm going to watch in this whole mix for Turner Scott is Ben Rhodes. I think Ben has matured tremendously over the last couple of seasons, and both on the track and off. And I think Ben is going to surprise a lot of people, and I think he's going to do very, very well in the East Series this year. It's going to be interesting. I mean, Kaz Gralla, I think, is still a little bit green. It's going to take him some time to make the adjustment. He hasn't run a ton of late model races, and I just think that that Kaz is going to need some time, but certainly is capable, and of course he brings a wealth of resource with him, with his partners, and I like Brandon Jones as well. I think this is going to be a fun group to watch in the East Series. There's a lot of personality in this group, and there's a lot of individual accomplishments. So I think this is going to be a nice group, and I'm happy to see that Turner Scott has got such a big group in the East Series this year. Turner Scott, I can remember when they first started in the sport, and they came in with a big splash with about 6 teams their first year out of the box in the nationwide trucks, I think, if I remember correctly. And boy, they've just continued to expand over there, and they don't do anything halfway. It's all top-notch stuff. So certainly that group is going to be in good shape going into the 14th season on the East Series.
Yeah, it will be, and that's going to bring out the checkered flag on tonight's edition of Motorsports Madness. Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online will be back on the air Thursday night for the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Report at 7 p.m. Eastern with Tom Baker and Kyle Souza, and we'll be back on the air a week from tonight for Motorsports Madness Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern for an hour of motorsports news, interviews, and conversation.
And on Monday, a week from today, we are going to really be featuring some open wheel stuff. We have got not one, but two of Andretti Autosports Indy Lights drivers who are going to be featured on Monday night, a week from tonight, right here at Motorsports Madness. Both Zach Veach and also Matthew Brabham are going to be on the show next Monday. That should be a great show. Both of those drivers, very personable, great stories behind him. Of course, Matthew Brabham with all of the history with his father, Jeff Brabham, and Matthew coming into Indy Lights off of a spectacular Pro Mazda season, and Zach Veach going into his second Indy Lights season, and he's come off a series of winter testing rounds where he's been up at the top of the charts and looks like he is ready to rock that series in 2014. So it'll be fun this coming Monday to feature a couple of open wheel racing's real up and coming talents.
Yes, it will be. So until then, for Tom Baker, Kyle Souza, James Pike, DJ Everett, Stephen Ovens, Joel Sebastianelli, and everybody that makes it happen between the Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online family of partnerships, I'm Jacob Seelman, reminding all of you race fans to keep it off the wall until we meet again, and we'll see you at the racetrack, folks. Until next Monday, so long.